Hi everybody, it's Honest John again, and I bought my first car in 1965. It was a 1954 Chevy, so it was 11 years old, but in primo condition and ran like a charm. Big old ugly old boat. Weird color, kind of a green mixed with battleship gray. Of course, we didn't have seat belts back then, so it was a big bench seat that you just sat in. And one time I was making a quick left-hand turn and started sliding across the bench seat, and had to desperately hang on to the wheel and try to maneuver. Somehow or other, I managed to avoid having an accident that time. Uh, but I'll tell you something. You know, bucket seats are a lot safer. You tend to stay where you're sitting, and you got your seat belt, and all that's cool. But let me tell you something. Them bench seats, they were great for making out at the drive-in. A whole lot of my friends lost their virginity at the Lonsdale Drive-In. Let me tell you that. And the cars back then, they were like indestructible. They were indestructible. If you maintained it, a car, a lot of times for people, their first car that they ever bought was the last car they ever bought. If you maintained it right, it would last you a lifetime. And even if you got in an accident, right? I mean, those cars were built to take it. They weren't safe for the people inside, but it was kind of strange sometimes. There'd be a real terrible accident and people would be dead and badly hurt, but you could drive the car home. So it was a lot safer when they started making it out of lighter and more flexible materials with what they call crushability. So now you have an accident and the car looks terrible. It's totaled and all that, but the passengers are a lot better off. Um, but as they were making this changeover, the car dealers thought, well, you know, this whole thing of having a car last forever that's not a great idea. We need to sell more cars. So they came up with what was called planned obsolescence, where you not only was the car body made out of material that wasn't as strong, but all the other parts of the car were made out of material that were tended to wear out a little quicker. And as time went along, cars got more complicated, a lot more repairs were needed, they were a lot more expensive to do the repairs, so it's very rare that somebody just has one car for a lifetime nowadays. Now, that's not what this video is all about, but we have an industry that's facing a different but similar kind of problem. The gun industry. A well-made gun is very durable, and if you maintain it right, it'll last you a real long time. And the percentage of people owning guns and gun sales have been going down for about the past 30 years, at least gun sales to private citizens. Now, the gun industry has gotten a real uptick from the Vietnam, not from the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War, you know, selling guns and bullets to support those wars. But Iraq's over and Afghanistan's winding down, and they're faced with a decreasing customer base and a piece of merchandise that lasts a pretty long time. Now, nobody knows what the exact figures of gun sales are. The gun industry won't release those. And they do some things that are kind of strange, like they count used gun sales the same as new gun sales. So no other industry does that. They're just kind of propping things up with that. And they also, if you want an estimate of gun sales, they tell you to check the number of background checks. And there's a lot of background checks. But not every background check has to do with the application to buy a gun. I mean, people go through background checks for certain jobs, and there's a lot of reasons why people are put through background checks and not necessarily gun applications. And even when it is a gun application, not every background check results in a sale. But you can't actually know the figures, and you can't actually track the guns. See, one way they've dealt with this problem of a decreasing customer base is by every now and then whipping up a kind of gun hysteria. Oh, everybody's going to lose their gun rights, and when they do that, people rush to the gun stores and buy more guns. Nowadays, there's a whole lot of people buying guns who already own other guns. So it's not like they're developing that many more new customers. Some, but not that many much. Now, I got to say, the gun industry is a very profitable industry. It's reaping very handsome profits, and if they, just from their sales. But in order to maximize their profits, they've become increasingly dependent on having guns sold to people who shouldn't have them. Gangs and drug cartels and other criminals, including terrorists. Now, obviously, they can't just sell directly to these guys. So they have a wide network of proxies, mostly in the southwestern states. Now, from time to time, there's also federally licensed gun dealers will be caught doing a lot of illegal sales. The way that they kind of get tipped off to that is that they'll have a large amount of guns just listed as missing, right? We're not talking about a few guns here and there, might be like 6,000 guns missing, so they start poking around with those people. But most of it is through individual private citizens buying and reselling guns. Now, how do they make this happen? Well, it's all about the lobbying. See, first of all, no national gun registry. So once a gun leaves a dealership, it kind of disappears. And in particular states, all the gun owners, they have the right to just engage in private sales without background checks. There's a gun show loophole, no background checks there. So you got all these guns going out that are just disappearing into the ether. Actually, they're disappearing into illegal hands. Matter of fact, it's somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 a year go to Mexico, and then there's a whole lot of the same stuff happens in the United States. And the way, like I said, the way you do it is by lobbying, by keeping the laws weak, so that actually a lot of these proxy dealers aren't doing anything illegal because that's the way the law is set up. And even if they're caught doing something illegal, now, if you get caught for, let's say you get convicted of conspiracy to traffic drugs, you get about 10 years in prison. If you get convicted of conspiracy to traffic guns, you'll get a year. So they've made it more difficult for the feds to find the people that are selling the guns in a way that should be illegal. They've made it more difficult to track where those guns came from and who had them last before they got into the illegal hands. And they've made sure that the penalties for doing it are nothing at all. And the NRA is doing a very, very big lobbying job to get gun rights restored to people convicted of crimes, even violent crimes. That way, they get those people back in business. So, the NRA and the gun lobby, they're constantly saying, well, criminals will always be able to find a way to get guns. Yes, they will. As long as the NRA, the greedy gun makers, and politicians can be bought off, criminals will always be able to get guns. Thanks for listening.